If you are moving up in Calgary around the $900 to $1.2 million range, then you already have your locations selected out. Potentially, you're looking at West. If not, then the lower priced inner Northwest, and then everything east of Deerfoot and southeast of Deerfoot has been ruled out. And another video ranking communities across Calgary this month did exactly just that. Here is what that approach misses out. The Calgary Real Estate Board numbers for the detached segment in Southeast showed that it was the only segment to gain the most ground compared to all other parts of the city. And at that budget, it buys you top of a lake community instead of somewhere dead middle of the West. I've gone ahead and pulled the numbers for the entire district plus 200 over closings to really analyze and understand this data for you. So let me show you the move up opportunity you're potentially missing out. If you've watched any videos about the best and worst neighborhoods in Calgary, then you know how the story usually goes. They usually rank it by feel, and most communities in the West and Northwest ends up taking all the rankings. Whereas the other quadrants usually just get a sentence or two and a shrug. And sure, you come away with an ordered list, but no idea of how they actually compare against each other. However, when you're moving up, an ordered list is the wrong way to do it, because it just gives you what is fashionable instead of where your value for a dollar actually lives. And that gap in approach is exactly where money is lost. For example, a move-up buyer around 1.1 million in West is basically just buying the benchmark home, versus spending that same money in Southeast buys you an extremely premium lot in a lake lifestyle community in one of the best neighborhoods across all of Calgary. So the exact same spend gives you two very different positions in the market, and anyone just purely ranking neighborhoods will not be able to give you that perspective, because a vibe does not put a clear value to where your money is best spent. Now, if you're local and live in the Southeast, your question's probably a lot sharper. You're probably asking, does Auburn Bay and Mahogany still hold the same value, or did they outprice themselves while you were not looking? However, if you're relocating and you're out of the province, then you have a lot harder question in front of you, because you cannot actually feel what it's like to have a 2.1 months of supply in one part of the market and a 4.2 months of supply in another part of the market, and what that actually means in terms of negotiating power, whether the buyer has the advantage or the seller does. Now, one quick thing before we get on to the data. I'm Iyer, your Calgary Realtor, and I pull every sold listing data constantly every single month right here on this channel. So nothing you see here is purely based on headlines or speculation. I like to keep actual boots on the ground data, inform you through the graphics that I put on screen, all the graphs that I produce, and that is so that you are kept informed and not just caught up with the hype. So stay with me, because just in about the next 5 minutes, I'm going to show you every single CREB stat that shows how the Southeast is performing well compared to the rest of the city, while rest of the city is on the opposite trend for the past 1 month. And of course, this can change next month, but it does not change the value proposition that we try to show you through what Southeast can do for you in the same value bucket. And then we're also going to take a look at very specific sales records to show you what your true negotiating power is, depending on where you're looking to shop in the Southeast. Our goal here is going to remain to drop best neighborhood. We're not trying to find that. We are going to replace it with understanding two numbers. What is it that your budget buys, and how tight is the market for it? Starting with the citywide picture, because that's where all the rankings usually start and then pretty much stop there. Citywide, we are at 3.12, which is up compared to 2.64 months of supply compared to last year. So we are definitely up, which reads as a more balanced or softer market. But detached on its own was at 2.45 months of supply, sitting at a benchmark price of $747,000. So this is actually still seller leaning and went up month over month. This sets your baseline for your move up home. Now let's get into the specific stats that matter. Now for the part that every ranking skips, and the stat that I promised you at the start of the video. Southeast detached went up month over month by 1.08%. That was the largest single month gain compared to any other detached segment. Northwest, not Northwest. It was the Southeast based on 190 sales and about 406 active listings to pick from. Now let's see where that gain actually sits on the entire table. This is the Calgary Real Estate Board detached stats across the board for different quadrants. The West is the tightest at 1.77 months of supply and about $1 million. The only one that is flat year over year but held its price compared to 2025. Now that is a genuine seller's market, and that's why move-up buyers run there. The next on the prestige list is Inner Northwest at about 2 months of supply and a benchmark price of $799,000. And Southeast, the quadrant that most people shrug at, sitting at 2.14 months of supply and a benchmark price of $704,000, the one that gained the most this month. Now I got to be honest about one thing. This video is not about saying Southeast is the single tightest detached market there is in Calgary. Absolutely not. Both the West and the Inner Northwest are tighter than Southeast. And that's why, for this very reason, come next market report, the West might see better gains than Southeast. However, what we are trying to catch at is that for the past report, it was the single largest gain for detached market while sitting firmly in seller market territory. And the reason this is important is because the value is generally always overlooked. Another thing general ranking videos, of course, are right about is the Northeast. Also east of Deerfoot is usually clumped in with Southeast. However, it is a completely different market. It sits at about 4.18 months of supply and is down nearly 7% year over year. So now that's your real buyer's market. So the instinct to avoid anything east of Deerfoot is technically correct, but it is targeted at the wrong quadrant. Yes, you should possibly avoid Northeast at this point, but Southeast for sure is being ignored at this point because the Southeast continues to gain, and treating them as one is the wrong approach. Now here's a graph that general Calgary Real Estate Board stats or other data that comes out cannot show you, and this is purely based on me pulling the data over the last 90 days into my own database and analyzing it. So these are not just purely based on list prices that sellers hope they can get, but this is actual closings, what buyers are willing to pay and where the prices are actually headed. So what we can see here is the right side is seller advantage, left side is buyer advantage. So the more extreme you're on the left side, the more powers the buyers have to negotiate and bring the prices down, and also reflects in future price trends, versus the extreme east or east of this graph is essentially where the seller power lies. And you can see Southeast lies in the middle. So it is in that perfect balance ground where there is still a lot of demand. The prices are still going up. It still offers a lot of opportunity, and it hasn't gone to either extreme. However, the more you go from that point to the right, the more you risk overpaying for your property because of very tight market conditions. And the value for your move-up purchase might be lesser and lesser as you go to the right. So to better understand what your money can buy you in the Southeast quadrant, when you're looking at Mahogany, for example, your median price sits at about $780, and this is with a typical of 26 days on market, and about 16 of those homes have actually sold at above $950,000. So the move-up product here is not rare. It's about 1/5 of the market. When you're looking at Auburn Bay, you're looking at 64 sales. So median is about 760,000 and a quicker 20 days on market. And this is including a lakeside estate at Auburn Shores Landing that actually sold for $2.4 million within 6 days. Plus, it sold for $51,000 over list price. Cranston in Riverstone had 75 sales, and the median sits at about $710,000 and sold in about 19 days, with a $1.1 million home on Cranbrook Landing closing in about 14 days, $23,000 over list price. So why does the move-up buyer then generally overlook this? And this is the only one thing I want you to take away from this video. In the move-up bracket overall, the West sells you basically your benchmark home. In the Inner Northwest, you get middle of the market. And then when you look at Southeast, you get top of the market amenities for essentially the one community or the one district that has seen gains last month. One quick thing before I make this concrete and really drive this home. If you want to analyze every single quadrant with me every month and compare it against the Calgary Real Estate Board stats and the rest of other quadrants, then definitely subscribe below because I keep putting out videos like this. Now let's break it down and really understand what value means for the Southeast, because that word gets thrown around a lot in real estate, but understanding what truly the amenities and the lifestyle promised is the key to making a decision like this. So for example, in the West, for around the 1.1 million, you're essentially getting an average home, a regular lot, no lake style living, and just an average suburban community. And potentially you will be having access to the LRT line and other amenities around. But other than that, you're paying essentially for the high amount of demand that is in that area and the shortage of supply reflected in the months of supply. Now in the Southeast, your benchmark price is about 704. So 1.1 million is nowhere close to that. 1.1 million is actually closer to the ceiling for Southeast, with exception to the properties that actually sit on the lake. Now the sold data that actually backs that up is in Mahogany, a property that's sold for about 1.1 to 1.2 million. In Mahogany, sold in 9 days, and the lake access estates sit above it at 1.3 to 2.3 million dollars for the exact same check. So one purchase puts you in the middle of the entire district versus the other one puts you at the top best product available for that entire district. Now for the one piece that decides your actual week-to-week experience as a buyer, and the part that Calgary Real Estate Board stats don't really put a clear picture on, and that is how much room do you actually have to negotiate right now. So I've checked every single sold price against their original listed price, and across all the 3 communities, you're sitting at about 98% sold to list price. So the average buyer got about a 2% price cut from the original first list price, and this is after the seller has already bended backwards by giving a 38% of properties giving a price cut for Mahogany, 30% in Auburn Bay, and 19% in Cranston. On top of that, the days on market for these communities is running longer now for the last 30 days compared to the past 90 days previous. So for example, Mahogany is sitting at about 37 days right now compared to the 26 days across the quarter. Put those two together and you get something that the benchmark price or the overall Calgary Real Estate Board stats completely miss out. And that is, you are being handed a really good negotiating power in the Southeast. Good homes are of course moving fast, but overall that is not an environment still for bidding wars like how we are seeing in the West and in the Northwest. And the amenity point is not a soft sell. This is something that move-up buyers realize that they are paying for and do not realize that they are forfeiting when they are excluding out Southeast. Mahogany has the largest freshwater lake in all of Calgary, and Auburn Bay also has its own, which then in turn provides access such as beach access, having skating rinks in the winter, and then the community access hubs that provide you a lot of sports and other things to engage with your neighbors and have a much better overall rounded lifestyle. So when vibe-based rankings for communities put Southeast below the West, they are actually putting down something in terms of amenities that the West just simply cannot offer because they were not built that way. Now, the honest caution I would give you is the entire Southeast is not just one big deal. The Southeast spans an enormous range, apartments sitting in low 300s to the median prices like I told you at 780, but then there are also communities sitting at about 710, but then there are also properties that push you way past the $2 million mark. So overall, saying Southeast is cheap is also the wrong approach and not the thing that you want to be holding on to. In fact, the value being offered is very, very specific. It is the top tier lake lifestyle communities in Southeast that offer you a top range home for the same benchmark price as West is where the value proposition and comparison really lies. And then the other caveat is Cranston in Riverstone is a riverside community. It does not have a lake of its own, so it is priced differently and it's to be priced based on that if that is what you care about. So when you look at overall ranking videos, the best neighborhoods in Calgary, they are not really lying to you, they're just measuring the wrong thing. and understanding what matters more to you and understanding what your specific mid, short, and long-term goals are. Based on that, designing a lifestyle and finding the best fit for what your money can best deliver to adapt you to that lifestyle is truly what matters. Now, here are your actionable takeaways. Here is the one thing I would do as a buyer that has been looking at West for about 900,000 to 1.2 million. Compare it against the Southeast and see what you would receive for that exact same ceiling. First, pull the benchmark for the community that you're looking at in Northwest. Then pull the benchmark for the communities you would potentially consider in Southeast and see how far, and question yourself how far your money would go if you picked one community over the other. Then you need to pull what actually sold in that community and how much below list price is your negotiating power in each. Because being stuck in a community where you are essentially at a very, very tight market, do not have a lot of leverage, and paying above list price versus another community where you have all the leverage with property sitting on the market a little bit longer and you're able to nitpick at the property that you'd actually love. And if you're moving for amenities and lot size, then, which is the case generally for a lot of move-up buyers, Southeast is a real consideration. And finally, one thing to definitely avoid: do not clump Northeast and Southeast together. Do not say anything east of Deerfoot I'm not purchasing. Those two are very different markets, like I've explained in this video, and hopefully that makes sense to you now. If you are moving up in Calgary right now and would like to run your budget against the district table before committing to any single quadrant, my link's in the description below. Let's book a consultation call and I will be happy to run you through those numbers. And you also have a QR code right here on screen that you can just scan and get that call booked in. We can put the West, Inner Northwest, and Southeast side by side for you based on your budget. See what's actually selling, how far below list price they were actually selling, and what your true negotiation power in each of those communities are. And if you like these district focused videos that show you how to get the most out of your purchase instead of just purely going off a vibe or a community feel, definitely subscribe to my channel as I'll put out more of these in the coming months. I'm going to be breaking down a quadrant every single month, comparing it against the CREB numbers, pulling actual sold stats to monitor where the market's headed so that you can make a very informed decision in this current market. Thanks again for staying till the end. I look forward to chatting to those of you that booked that consultation call. Those are always my favorite conversations, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Till then, take care.